Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is me, Inayat Afridi, and I am Director of Leeds Academy of English Language and Information Technology, Peshawar. This is my second solo podcast again, as I'm already done with my first podcast. And today's podcast, I have brought the second important topic from linguistics, and that is the linguistics versus psycholinguistics. So we are going to differentiate what is linguistics and what is psycholinguistics, right? Before we get into this one, let me tell you that I have already shared one lecture from the psycholinguistics where I define psycholinguistics and I give the brief historical backgrounds of the psycholinguistics. I think the third part in that lecture was the theories proposed by different psycholinguists and linguists. So this podcast specifically focus on the difference between linguistics versus psycholinguistics. So before we move towards the rest of the important topics, first we would like to define what is linguistics, right? So the first part of this lecture is what is linguistics. So I think this is a very simple definition, so I'm going to share with you. Linguistics can be defined as the scientific study of language, its structure, patterns, and systems within a language, right? The second important point which I have written says that linguistics studies language as an external systems, where we study that language doesn't exist only in the human mind, but it is something external, part of the structure of the society, right? Okay. After this, we have one key questions within this lecture, based on which I'm going to proceed the lecture down to the conclusion section, and that is the key questions right here is how is language structure, right? Okay. After we have the core or the fundamental branches, including number one, phonetics, which is the scientific study of speech sounds. We have the second one, that is phonology, where we study the sound systems. Number third, morphology, where we study the word formations or the different form of the words. After we have the syntax, which studies the words or the sentence or the class structures. And after we have the semantics that deals with the meaning of words. And the last one is the pragmatics, means that meaning that we take or that we discuss in the special context. So pragmatics is one of the important and is a central branch of the linguistics that deals with the how we use different words in different settings and how we use different words in different contexts, right? Okay. After we have the major figures in linguistics. So we have two major figures. Number one, the Ferdinand de Sosa, right, who introduced the concepts of structuralisms. And after Ferdinand de Sosa, we have the Noam Chomsky, an American psycholinguist who introduced the concepts of the generative grammar, right? Okay. Okay, after this one, so we are done with the linguistics, and then we have the psycholinguistics. So the question right here is what is psycholinguistics? I think I have already discussed this one. The psycholinguistics has a composite words, which is made up of two words. Number one, psyche, which means mind, and linguistics mean they study of language within the human mind, right? But I have given a very clear and a very transparent definitions of psycholinguistics, which is the scientific study of how the human mind and brain process language, right? And after this language is received, it is processed within the mind, and after this is processed, then we articulate that language through our tongue. So basically, psycholinguistics also studies language as a mental and a cognitive process. And I think in my previous lecture, I shared one point with you that Noam Chomsky introduced the concept of the late, which is the language acquisition device embedded in the human mind since his or her birth. And this laid the language acquisition devices. After acquiring language, it works on that, it processes the language for its articulation. So this important line, right, pushes back to that concept, right? Again, we have one of the key questions, like we had one questions in the linguistics, so same we have right here, and that is, how does the brain produce and understand language? So inshallah, this part of the questions will be discussed, right, and next on my podcast, right? But right here, we have some major and fundamental areas of the psycholinguistics. So number one, in psycholinguistics, we study the language acquisitions, how we acquire language. Number two, it also studies the language comprehension, that once we acquire a language within a social environment, that how we comprehend the language. And number third is the speech production. So language is acquired, then it is produced, it is processed, it is comprehended after we articulate that. So that's actually the speech productions. And also we study the neuro-linguistics, right? The connectivity of language with the human brain. The next is the bilingual processing, right? That how an individual mind processes two languages timely, right? Okay. So after this, we are moving to the important contributors. Number one is the Wilhelm Wundt, right? He's also known as the father of the experimental psychology. Already we are done at the first lecture. He actually founded the first psychology laboratory in 1879 in Leipzig University. And his main focus was on the structuralisms, to study the structure of the mind through introspections. Because once we go deep inside the human mind, then we understand the area of the human mind which are responsible for the acquisitions, for the processes of the language, right? So this was the point, okay. And after the impact, so he established psychology as an independent scientific discipline separate from philosophy. After we have the second contributor was the Jean Berko-Gleason, known as research in language developments in children, right? So Jean Berko-Gleason is famous for having done research in language development in children, right? Okay, and let me give you one of the famous scientific study he did in this field, that the work test in 1958, which showed that children learn language rules like pluralizations, not just memorize words. So he focused on the point that children do not only acquire the language, right? But once they acquire them, then they think for sometimes that what rules actually we use to understand the language, and what rules actually we employ, we use to process that language, right, for its final articulation. After the field, right, he contributed is the psycholinguistics and children language acquisition. So these are the two key areas. Number one, psycholinguistics and child language acquisitions, where he has contributed a lot. Okay, the fact he has left, and that he demonstrated that children actively apply grammatical rules, right? Okay. After this, we have the third key contributor, who was the B.F. Skinner, and he's also known for the behaviorisms and operant conditions. Will be part of in this lecture. And his B.F. Skinner central and the integral idea was that behavior is shaped by reinforcement and punishment, right? In connection with the language acquisitions and processing. Punishing, rewarding, or reinforcements again compels them to acquire and to understand the language, right? Okay. Now the question is that what is the famous concept B.F. Skinner introduced? So this famous concept is actually called the Skinner box experiment, right? The impact he has left in this field in psycholinguistics is that he actively influenced educations, behavior therapy, and parental strategy. So three key areas where he has contributed a lot, right? Okay. Now I'm moving towards the most important part of this lecture, and that is the key differences between linguistics and psycholinguistics. So it's been already defined, but right here, linguistics studies the architecture of language, while psycholinguistics studies the machinery of the mind, right? Again, it pushes back to the late. Okay, now after that, we have the competence versus performance. So what is the key difference between competence and performance? So basically, these two important concepts were introduced by Noam Chomsky, where competence is actually the knowledge of the language, and performance is that how we apply the knowledge and how we use that language practically elsewhere, right? So right here it's written that competence is the knowledge of language, and performance is that how we actually use that language in different contexts and different social environments. The fifth important term, that is the mental lexicon, which is also called the mental dictionary. I mean, the internal dictionary stores in the brain, right? The word stock and the lexical stuffs that we have in the mind, right? Okay. The sixth important concept connected with this is the critical period hypothesis, which says that language acquisitions is biologically time sensitive, right? Number seven says the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is associated with Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee-Whorf, where the central idea that language shapes our thoughts. I mean, our thoughts are technically transformed, and they are shaped by, determined by the language. But this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis will have a separate solo podcast, right? The eighth one is the relationship between them. Now, think of it like linguistics is actually the blueprint of a buildings, while psycholinguistics how people live and function inside that building. So, have interesting, clear boundary and clear difference between linguistics and psycholinguistics. So these are interconnected, but mainly focuses on different dimensions of language. And after this, I have given some important MCQs for your BS exams. It might help you in your commission test. So I think rightly I have given, let me count, let me scroll it down. So, okay, so after the main lecture, I have given 10 important MCQs that will really help you out if you are attempting BS English or any other exams, including your competitive examinations. Might help you in interview situation, right? So you need to focus along with the main lecture, also on the MCQs. And the final thought, which is very interesting, and I just, after analyzing the whole stuff in the whole lecture, this is very important, that language is not just words and rules, it is structure, cognition, identity, consciousness combined, right? And linguistics tells us what language is, while psycholinguistics tells us how language lives inside us. The important part of this lecture is that do me a favor to subscribe my YouTube channel, The Inayat Dialogue. Thank you so much. And one request, that after giving to the whole lecture right from the top to down, so if you have any questions and if you have any comments on that, so drop in the comment box, right? But inshallah, rest of my lectures will be uploaded soon. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck, and do subscribe my YouTube channel, The Inayat Dialogue. Good luck.